Welcome all of you to this wonderful session by Zenatix solution, IoT versus the BMS. I'm sure all of you are going to hear a lot from Mr. Prabhat Goyalji and then also Dr. Amarjit Singh ji on this particular technology. Disclaimer, the information provided within this webinar purpose, we try to keep the information up to date and correct. Presentations or warranties, completeness, accuracy, reliability, suitability, and availability with respect to the information, products, services, and related graphics contained in this webinar for any purpose. Any use of this information is at your own risk. We do not guarantee or declare that the information on webinar is accurate and correct. We are not responsible, nor can they be held liable for any errors or hereuses in the content of the webinars. Once again, I welcome you to Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So can I introduce the speakers, please?
Yes, sir. Next slide. Amarjit, sir, next slide. Yeah.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, before we get started, certain things to understand about the program. We'll have a 45-minute session and followed by 15-minute question and answer session. Then you can type your questions in the question and answer of our webinar panel anytime you wish to, and they'll be answered at the end of the webinar by the representatives from the Zenatix. Slides and webinars recording will be emailed to all of you after the session. And at the end of the webinar, you will also receive a short survey, for which we would like to, love to hear your feedbacks on the session that you have had. Now, here are our two speakers, Mr. Prabhat Goyal and Dr. Amarjit Singh. Prabhatji is an HVAC expert with over 40 years of experience in HVAC and HVAC industry in design, project execution, and commissioning of HVAC systems, associated control systems. He has done BTech from IIT Kharagpur and CCN 1 and 2 from Career Bynum Institute, USA. He is a visiting faculty at ISRE Institute of Excellence, Delhi. I welcome you, Mr. Prabhat Goyalji. Our second speaker is Dr. Amarjit Singh. Amarjit ji is a co-founder and chief technical officer at Zenatix. He is an expert in embedded systems, data acquisition, AI algorithms, and energy efficiency. He has completed his MS and PhD from UCLA and his BTech from IIT Delhi. He is also an ex-IIT Delhi professor. I welcome you, Dr. Amarjit Singh ji.
Thank you, sir.
And I also welcome at the same time all our delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure Prabhatji and Dr. Amarjit Singh is going to take us through a very, very good, knowledgeable session and also an interactive session after that. So I welcome all of you once again. Now I request sirs, please take over the sessions.
Sure. Thank you. And good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking out time on this Tuesday afternoon for this presentation on IoT based BMS, right? So while it's a product presentation, we felt that we should start off by just giving a high level overview of how IoT powered automation is different from a traditional BMS. And we'll do that as a Q&A session between me and Mr. Prabhat, where we have done these kind of webinars in the past, and a few of the burning questions that have come up, we wanted to first sort of address those, keeping in mind Mr. Prabhat's experience in actually installing innovation over decades that he has himself worked in the HVAC industry. And then I'll jump on to talking about Zenatix, our ZenConnect solution, talk briefly about that, and then get into the real meat, talk about real case studies that we have uh, as an examples of what we have done in the field, so that you can get a better clarity of who we are and what we do. So, Mr. Prabhat, there has been a lot of talk about net zero, sustainability, energy sustainability goals, with COP26 also recently finishing, right? And we all know that when it comes to energy consumption, buildings consume 40% of the global energy, right? And of that 40%, roughly about 60% is going into heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, right? So, buildings energy efficiency will play a prominent role in defining the ESG goals. What's your view on this broader topic of building energy efficiency in achieving the net zero or the sustainability goals?
So thank you, Amarjeet. Thank you, Ishray, for having me on the program. I think it's one of the real burning questions today about sustainability and then leading to net zero. Almost the world gets together once in a year. The last time was Glasgow. The next time is going to be Dubai, in talking about energy and how we can sustain our climate and at the same time sort of not damage the environment and keep on going with our economic progress. And that makes net zero at the center of most things. Now look at it. India, China, we still have coal-based power plants. And the world is really no longer going to take coal-based energy into account. And so they want us to shift. And we install 3 million room air conditioners year after year. HVAC use is no longer a luxury. It's quite a necessity. If you look at hospitals and other things, you know, it's become a part of our daily life and it will go on. So how do we sort of add so much of air conditioning equipment and at the same time stay with the same power plants? And that brings in the question of being more efficient in terms of whatever we are doing, whether it is equipment efficiency, whether it is system efficiency. And HVAC being, as you have seen, a major power consumer, we have to get it right. We have to see, when we were young, we were told, when you get out of the room, please put that light off. And so that's how we have grown up. We are not like some of the other first world countries where they keep things on at the same time. But in order to be able to do that effectively, we need real-time monitoring, all said and done. Even your window air conditioners, you will see 3 years down the road, will go into something like real-time monitoring. People will know how much energy they have used, and they will be expected to keep track of that. And controls are going to be playing a major role in all these particular things. And say, in the year 2022 and going ahead, one thing that we can depend on and that everyone is talking about is a higher degree of controls, monitoring, keeping track of things. And that's how we are going to reach the net zero numbers. Yes, we are going to do so much of green power also, but don't just depend on green power expanding to take care of all our requirements. So I think I have answered why net zero is important, how will we get to net zero, and how controls and monitoring is going to be a key part of this particular movement.
Sure. So I think that makes perfect sense that look, buildings consume a major proportion of the energy that is being consumed globally within buildings. HVAC is the major guzzler. And as you are saying that the real-time monitoring and efficient control is the key to improve this energy efficiency, right?
Right.
And that makes perfect sense. But I mean, this real-time monitoring and control has been part of BMS or building automation systems for several decades, right? There are thousands of large buildings in India, right? This BMS automation has been there for decades, but still we see that even today, the BMS penetration in India is perhaps less than 5%. I mean, those are some of the statistics we keep hearing, right? Um, what are your views on why BMS penetration is so low, especially in context of countries like India?
So Amarjeet, I have followed this thing being an air conditioning engineer for the last good 35 years, installed the first DDC controlled VAV systems in accommodation complex in Dubai, moved on to CCN, moved on to PLCs, moved on to district cooling and what have you, and done all these particular things. And 20, 30 years back, there was a lot of newness about it. You know, the first time we saw all this data appearing on the computer screens when not even Windows was invented, we were very excited. I think every senior person in Dubai came to that particular installation to see what was going on. And then we moved on to graphic screens. But end of the day, unfortunately, the return on investment that we were getting from these kind of systems, showing lovely BMPs, you know, graphics, a fan is rotating and water is being pumped and things like that, it did not really cut very much of ice with the building owners or the building finances. It's nice to be able to change set points and look at graphic data from the screen. But all along, there was an underlying promise that this will do a lot of energy saving. And in order to do energy saving, you had to download all the history, keep it in the hard disk, analyze the data, draw graphs and charts, and then it would take necessary action that would provide you the energy saving. Now, that last part really, you know, due to the complexities of the system, it did not, the companies did not pay attention, people wanted it, and somehow that didn't get done and the penetration remained. Next, it was meant for the larger projects. I would say if you had an airport, if you had a large hotel, in fact, the hotel started it in India, and things like that, they went in for the BMS systems. What about the multitude of package unit jobs and smaller systems and computer rooms and, you know, things like that? Those were not covered by BMS. We still use the simple thermostats and what have you. The BMS industry did not really cater for that particular thing. Time for doing this was enormous. Lots and lots of wiring. We realized, I would say, first of all, we all went into the IO lists. You know, IO lists of 100, 200, it grew to thousands of points. The right information that you really wanted out of that was some 20, 30 points. And the rest was totally superfluous. That's what it was found. There was expertise, but when the system got handed over and it went from one particular person who was looking into it to the next person, half the information was lost. Because however much of documentation you did at that point of time, it was not enough to just look at documentation and get on with the system. So every time you had a person change, and obviously the first person change took place when the BMS company handed it over to the customer, and it just kept depleting. The service contract rates were enormously high, and there were a lot of customers who said, look, our utility of this system is not enough. Whatever we have, let the chief engineers and others live with it. We are not going to renew the system. And then they went out to get spares and they couldn't get spares in the market. They were very proprietary product. If you look at ASHRAE, they came out with the backnet, and those of the people who are in the market today doing these things, they are the better judges to say, like the facility managers, etc. Is the system expandable? Can you buy a certain thing from a different manufacturer and put it in? So there were a lot of challenges. I think challenges remain in any field that we have. And that is how newer and newer technologies come in. And because cities, not just HVAC systems or building systems, other systems were also getting on to the internet. The internet has become so powerful that IoT emerged. And there are differences. We will talk about the differences. And this is the way the world will move forward. So I would suggest, I've asked for a poll to be done. Let the people be the judge, run the poll. Let them also have a chance to answer whether what one is saying is the bottom line or is there a different view to it. So go ahead. Run the poll if you can, please.
So we'll have this poll on the screen now. We believe that all of you know this industry perhaps much more than many of us as well, right? So happy to hear views from the participants.
I think, Amarjeet, we can move on.
Sure. I think just maybe 100+ people have already participated. So shall I share the results?
Yes, please do. I will get to know whether what I'm saying is right or wrong. Yeah.
Can you see the results?
Okay, so a good number of people are saying that if handled meticulously, they will deliver the expected ROI. So being meticulous is the key. And yes, I will take that on board. Go right ahead.
Yeah, so we are talking about that BMS penetration is low for multitude of reasons, right? And especially being ROI being one of them. Recently, we have all started hearing about this buzzword called Internet of Things or IoT, right? I mean, this is what this talk is also about. So BMS has these layers of hardware, right? All the way from DDCs to backnet controller, and then software displaying data, and then controls, right? Would you before we get into those layers, would you talk about how IoT is sort of trying to disrupt the innovation in this building automation space, right? That BMS was good for what it was designed for in 80s and 90s. And there has been now this talk of IoT delivering the new age innovation in the building energy efficiency. So how is this IoT different from BMS?
Okay, so BMS was pretty structured, developed around HVAC and other items specifically for buildings. There were SCADA systems for industry, etc. But the kind of BMS we are talking about, it was kind of with buildings. Over a period of time, different segments have developed. If you look at equipment, a lot of the equipment manufacturers, they are now embedding the controls into the equipment and sending it to the site. And they would like to get the data for themselves also to see whether things are working properly or not. And hardware is basically coming out embedded in the systems or the equipment. So the software part that you require, it really has to be expandable to meet to pick up information from all these particular things. So it cannot depend on a particular supplier or a particular equipment. It has to be more open. And that's where, once again, you had major players like Apple, Google, and other people, Amazon coming in at the lower end, at the home automation market, and they wanted their own. The protocol changed over there also. So with all these things coming in, you wanted something which was not heavy on hardware, but it was a software intelligence system that you were looking at. Systems had to be adaptable, systems had to be expandable, systems have to be plug and play, systems have to be wireless based on wireless technology, because wireless has developed so much. The difficulty of wiring has to be taken out. And that is where, things are leading and making IoT more acceptable and more expandable today. And there will be an overlap. I would say BMS and IoT will definitely overlap with each other. Now, what happens when you have a certain equipment delivered to your site, which is able to look at the indoor air quality and do graphs and charts by itself? Are you going to go about installing
Mr. Prabhat, sir, I think we lost your voice.
Is it there now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just had to cut the mute and then come back. So I don't know where I lost my voice, but I think I'll continue.
So you're talking about IoT and BMS
Yeah.
are sort of supporting each other, and an equipment being shipped already, which is connected, which gives a connected graph.
So, you have to be more sort of open now with things. You can't just stick to one manufacturer, one protocol, and say we will do it all. There will be a much bigger variety of equipment coming to your sites. At the end of the day, the proof of the pudding is in the taste of it. If the facility manager is able to do what he wants to do with the system, any system is good. Okay. And in all probabilities, if a lot of hardware comes already installed by the equipment guys, then it has to be software heavy solution, which is IoT at the end of the day. So that's my take on this.
I think our audience is well ahead of us. So we have a question from Mr. Javed. What is the difference between IoT and BMS systems, right? And there is another question which says that IoT or BMS is like a CT scan, right? It only gives us data. We as users fail to understand what we can do with all of that data, right? And I think that's where we are also headed to. So we gave a brief about what IoT is. And I was initially talking about layers in the BMS, right? That there is this hardware layer, there is a software, there is data, there is control. So how is IoT and BMS different across these variety of layers that essentially this BMS provides? Can you shed some light on it?
Okay, so I will start with the lowest of layers, basically, which are sensors, switches, etc. Okay, so this was quite a layer to start with, which was right at the bottom. Some was LAN compatible, some was BACnet compatible, whatever. But a sensor was a sensor at that point of time. Now you have smart sensors, which don't need the edge controller in between, which directly transfer information onto your top end or to the user. So that's the story of the lowest layer. The next layer was basically your IO controller, which we called in BMS. These were analog inputs, digital inputs, analog outputs, digital outputs. Some were with intelligence put in over there, whereas some were just IO points and the intelligence was yet in the upper layer. So today, basically, they were all hardwired upwards, right up to the computer. And then you could have an internet to take it somewhere else. Today, there is a lot of wireless things when it comes to IoT. I'm saying these will be edge controllers. So every air handling unit may have an edge controller, and it will receive and transmit information without that central bus, which you needed before. You don't need to transfer from microprocessor to this particular thing information by using a gateway. You will get your information from the chillers or from the actuators directly on a third-party system. So there will be various gateways which will transfer the information down to the IoT hub. It will only make the life simpler. Now, come to the final part, which this gentleman has asked the question. We get so much data, what do we do with it? Really, that was one of the things at the heart of it. Unless you take the data and are able to draw graphs, charts, and analyze and get to know where you are wasting energy, all that data is of less use. It's only now that we can gather this data through the cloud or through a server put in an airport or something like that, analyze that data, and then get to do the energy control routines. And that is the important point of IoT-based systems. So I hope I have, talked about the layers and the difference between the two systems and how their layers differ.
Yeah, makes perfect sense, right? That, I mean, in a way, things were previously hardwired and connected. The system commissioning and installation took months, right? Which now with IoT-based systems, you can have a distributed architecture, different gateways controlling different zones in the building. The notion of a building comes together as a soft layer notion only. You can have wireless IO cards. Everything gets connected to the cloud, and there are algorithms that are then sort of looking at this data and sort of deciding the control actions, right?
Yes, in fact, we are looking for, just 1 second, we are looking for commissioning the buildings using the data which is coming from these particular things, and not commissioning the BMS after everything else has been commissioned.
Correct.
Okay, so if my dampers, my actuators, my temperature sensors, I can get it on the day it is installed, I don't have to wait till the consultant can sit in his office and see how commissioning is being done at site. And we will hold the IoT people to this particular thing. That is the promise, and that has to be delivered sooner rather than later. So go ahead, Amarjit.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, our audience is very smart. They are always one step ahead of us. So there is this question, there is this obvious question that comes up, that you are pushing intelligence, I mean, pushing data and control to the cloud. What about security, right? Is this data encrypted? So can you, I mean, we at Zenatix, of course, take security very, very seriously. And communicate data in a very secure manner. But as a practitioner who has himself deployed a whole lot of innovation over decades in the field, right? I would like to hear your views on security threats in automation. I mean, especially IoT-based automation.
So to everyone, security is paramount. Okay. Now, I remember one of my biggest jobs in Turkey, where we installed the complete controllers on 5 chillers, each of them about 4,000 tons. And the whole panel was basically an IO controller panel. Now, if you look at the start-stop switch, it goes through the IO controller. But if you look at the emergency stop, is it going to go through the IO controller? No. The emergency stop directly cuts the relay that runs the motor. So there are a lot of precautions that we take, whether it is an IoT-based job, BMS-based job, where critical equipment like the compressor of a chiller or very important items in the building, they are not going through this rigmarole of networks and things like that. Like if you have a lift system, I wouldn't connect my lift apart from the last alarm and status to a IoT or a BMS based system. Let anyone tell me anything. I don't want a door opening without the lift car being over there. Hackers will always be there. But what is the utility of hacking? If the guy is so good at hacking, let him go and hack banks. Can somebody look at your bank account today with all these particular hackers? Why would he come into this particular domain in order to disrupt equipment? Okay. If it was a SCADA based system, a steel producing mill or something like that, they would be very bothered about security if you change their speeds at different places. But in a building system, what do you achieve? I'm to say, what is the security threat? And that security threat, people in software and in these kind of networked industries are already willing to promise that they can take care of the breaches. I think we should give these people a chance, and we should go ahead with doing what we are doing in order to get the maximum benefit out of it. If we see some hiccups down the road, I'm sure designers today are intelligent enough to take care of it. My question, a counter question is, if you see anything that has happened in the field, do let us know. Do let people who are into the IoT field know, so that we can again go one step ahead on that. So I think, Amarjeet, I've taken a lot of your time today, and would like to hand it over back to you so that you can do the product presentation, and then we can come back at the end of the day and answer some of the other questions that people might have.
Sure.
So
Yeah. Thank you, sir. And I think, the whole purpose is actually served. Before we get into what we do as a company, right, where we look at some of, in fact, all of these things very, very seriously, especially the security aspect, right? We wanted to cover it in a generic sense for broader understanding for everyone, right? And as you talked about security, if you can, today you are doing bank transactions from your phone, right? They are happening remotely. You are transferring money over UPI from one person. In fact, now over WhatsApp, right? Just easily doing it, right? And if you can trust your money, you can trust your building's data with these secure protocols, because pretty much the communication aspects have similar levels of security when it comes to encryption, data encryption, etc. Right?
Correct.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. If you have one final
This system is more geared towards energy, and to say, make use of it to reduce the energy spend and the energy used in your buildings and facilities. This is not one of those where we make a IO list of 2,000 points and something comes on off, you see the wrong information or something like that. So even in terms of security, what are the challenges? Right. As we see the challenges, we will take care of it. Right. Okay, go right ahead.
Yeah, so I'll talk about Zenatix now briefly. So Zenatix was started roughly about 8 years ago. We were initially funded by some of the top angel investors, including Snapdeal co-founders, head of Google India, some of the best early stage investors in the country. Bloom Ventures and Pi Ventures invested into it. Before roughly about 4 years ago, Hero Group came on board. And I think that's a big validation that a large conglomerate like Hero Group setting up a separate subsidiary called Hero Electronics, which is into sustainability, into a connected future, right? Believing in the Zenatix vision and investing into the Zenatix vision. And that has shown in terms of the real action on the field as well. We have more than 2,000 deployments spread across more than 200 cities in India. When it comes to IoT-based automation in built environment, we are perhaps the largest company in India and now expanding globally. And when it comes, we started this whole discussion on sustainability. So we have saved more than 50 gigawatt hours of energy, right? Especially in context of India, this energy saving translates to much more when it comes to energy production because of the T&D losses, etc. So, we already feel good about the impact we have gotten across the businesses as well, in terms of improving their bottom line, as well as on the environment too, right? As I said, the company was started by Rahul, Vishal, and I. We were classmates at IIT Delhi, graduated roughly about 20 years ago. And then over time, we have had senior people like Shubhendu and Ishan joining us and taking over the middle management, right? It's not just the execution team and the experience we have gained over the years, but also the experience of many experts and advisors that we have on board, right? That bring in the real uh, execution, that keep us grounded, that okay, whatever we are building has to be relevant in the context of whatever values we want to deliver, right? So we have Mr. Datta Godbole. He was ex-CTO of Honeywell Buildings, and he's on our advisory committee. We have already talked about you, sir. And then Mr. Sudeep, he was global VP at Centrica. That's a British multinational energy and services company. So he brings in that vast, I mean, both Mr. Datta and Mr. Sudeep brings in that vast global experience of how large companies view this space, right? And what is the innovation that, let's say, a smaller company grown out of India can really bring in to disrupt this space, right? And of course, backed by Mr. Ujjwal Munjal and Mr. Nikhil Rajpal from the Hero Group, right? So that's about the team, right? But I mean, the proof lies in the pudding, right? And here is a list of logos that have trusted us over the years, right? With maintaining their and with giving them better energy efficiency, giving them better energy savings, better predictive maintenance of their assets, and all those things geographically distributed. Very sticky customer base. We have more than 90% retention, right? And as I said, we are already one of the largest when it comes to IoT-based automation in India, and growing into Middle East, and also have plans to expand to Southeast Asia, US, and Europe as well. In terms of volume, we have 50,000 assets connected to us, more than 200 million data points flow into our system, right? And when you look at the logos, they vary. You can taste the variation, right? You can see that there are very small stores like Domino's or 24/7, to a middle-sized store like a Shoppers Stop or a Decathlon, to a large building which is a 4-star hotel like a Hyatt or a Sheraton, right? So we have solutions that span across this whole space, and that is because we started from the very base, right? I mean, as we were talking about it, and there was actually an audience question also, which was very relevant, that BMS was always built for very large buildings, and even there it didn't give the expected ROI. What about the smaller build spaces? What about these smaller distributed retail chains, right? So we actually started from those smaller, building a IoT-based solution for those smaller distributed retail chains, which is why you see all of these Pizza Huts, Haldiram, Decathlon, Shoppers Stop, Domino's, Barbecue Nation, all on this sheet, right? And then we moved up the ladder. We said that, okay, now think of a large building as actually, let's say 10, 20 of these small physical stores actually physically co-located in the same space, right? So why can't we actually create a distributed architecture in a building rather than a centralized architecture the way BMS does, right? And then connect everything in a staged manner. And I'll talk about that in more details. So what do we really offer in terms of value, right? This ZenConnect based IoT system, it gives you, of course, as I talk about energy efficiency through centralized monitoring, intelligent control, you get energy savings. The system in a way pays for itself within 12 to 18 months of ROI. But you are also collecting a lot of data. This data is temperature, humidity, air quality, etc. data. So you can have, for example, for your freezers and refrigeration systems, temperature and humidity compliance, your air quality monitoring for occupants in the building. And then as you are monitoring these different assets, you're collecting this data get pushed into a digital ticketing system, right? And these algorithms then look at the data to then create tickets. Are your assets performing properly? If they're not performing properly, what maintenance do these assets need? And these tickets either go into the ticketing system that comes integrated with our solution, or if the customer already has a ticketing system, we could do these seamless integrations with third-party systems, right? These tickets are then worked upon by facility management teams in the field and are automatically opened or closed based on the data, right? And it also starts giving you detailed insights about how much each ticket took, right, in terms of servicing, right? So you can really create these digital workflows with all this data coming in, right? You can have predictive maintenance, web-based dashboards. If you have distributed facilities, you can view all of them at one central location, right? And then you can start correlating this energy data with your top line data, right? For example, for hotels, right? If you want to understand how much is your energy consumption per occupied room, and this occupancy varies over time. If you are a manufacturing plant, you want to understand how much is your energy consumption per unit of output produced, and this output is the top line. Your top line is going into some other third-party ERPs, right? While your energy data is here. So we provide seamless integrations with your ERP systems so that that data can be connected to our data. And then we can give you, let's say, energy consumption per occupied room or energy consumption per unit of output produced, right? These kind of insights are very meaningful insights, which are always hidden and are never brought out to the surface. And these insights then lead to data-driven decision-making, right? Which can even be pushed onto places like procurement, right? Where you would otherwise not look at this energy data to decide, okay, which type of machine you should be procuring next, or which type of HVAC equipment from which manufacturer you should be procuring if for your next project, right? So how is this whole value being delivered, right? We have built this technology end to end. It's all grown in-house. We have talked about different pitfalls of BMS, right? The BMS penetration in India is very, very low because it was built for a Western context, right? And it is pushed into a context of India, which is reasonably different, right? When it comes to how things get executed on the ground, right? While this, we have built this technology keeping in mind the whole Indian context, right? And sort of trying to disrupt the space, right? Where the BMS commissioning would take 6 months to, anywhere from 2 to 6 months to sort of finish a project. With the wireless-based sensing and wireless-based control, we have our industry first wireless DDC, right? So which you can, even in an existing building, you can commission the system move into the building, get the systems deployed without affecting the occupants, and then move out, right? And then commission everything using web-based or mobile-based dashboards, right? Very, very extensible system, right? So if you already have assets or from OEMs that give connectivity, we would not install an extra hardware. We would directly connect with those assets, right? Very hardware light, very software centric solution. We have built our own industrial grade gateway, which has local edge intelligence and which is extensible to support a huge variety of protocols, whether it is Modbus or wireless like OpenThread, Zigbee, Bluetooth, and then of course connecting back over BACnet also, that if you already have a BMS, right? And it's an part of the BMS is operating, our systems would rather pull data from that operating BMS. Whatever is not operating, we will retrofit that and we will bring the whole building together onto a single platform, right? This platform is cloud hosted, which is scalable hosting. If you have a very large project which spans across hundreds of large buildings, you can even envision having an in-house data center and hosting our stack on that data center. Typically, that would require a reasonably large project for having a private hosting, but that's also possible. Configurable dashboards. So within a building, you may have people who should be only seeing, let's say, the air side or only the water side, or if you have multitude of buildings, you may have a building manager who should only see data for his building, but you would have an area manager who wants to see the data for all the buildings in his area, right? So very configurable, and each of these user personas want to see data in a different way, right? Tickets in a different way, right? So highly configurable dashboards, integrated ticketing system, extract a lot of insights. Like I said, we collect 200 million data points every day. It's not the raw data that people would care about, but it's actually the insights from this raw data that we would care about. The whole system is completely plug and play, can be commissioned very, very quickly. You can do remote commissioning, remote deployment, remote troubleshooting for many of the assets, right? And we also, often what happens is that the parts of the BMS are not operating and we don't know about it, right? So some of those alarms keep popping, but which of those alarms are relevant alarms, again, we don't know, right? We actually have an intelligent issue framework that looks at the health data also and proactively would tell you, okay, which systems require maintenance, right? So essentially, all in all, huge volumes of data essentially gets translated into actionable insights, and that can help you achieve energy efficiency, predictive maintenance for the assets for the customer, and also to maintain your own IoT assets that have been deployed in a very, very intelligent manner, right? So that's all about the solution, right? I mean, I would rather jump into how things have been executed in the field, right? So this is the first case study where it was India's leading hotel owner and asset manager. They own 27 hotel properties with large brands like Marriott, IHG, or Hyatt, right? With the total building area is roughly about 2.4 million square feet. So what we did for them was very basic monitoring only solution, right? Here, 4 of these 27 properties already had a BMS, so we connected with the legacy BMS. For the rest of the properties, we instrumented them with energy meters, and we also instrumented the building with temperature and humidity sensors to monitor how the HVAC is performing by looking at the temperature data in lobbies, rooms, hallways, banquets, etc. Right? All this data went into the cloud where our algorithms would look at the data, would create automated tickets from the data, and those tickets are then serviced by the operational team on the field, right? So what is the value being delivered? The data collection fed into AI ML powered data analytics resulted in anomaly detection, resulted in an integrated ticketing platform, and very actionable tickets coming out of it, right? So Zenatix really closed the loop from the data coming in to actually the actions being taken in the field, right? And the customer suddenly starts seeing the real-time electrical and compliance monitoring, right? Energy consumption per room occupied. Then defects like, are you maintaining your power factors? Do you have voltage and current imbalances, right? How, if you have solar installations, how much is your solar producing, right? Indoor temperature, humidity, and AQI level monitoring. This is pure monitoring, right? And this pure monitoring itself delivered an ROI in the 12 to 18 month time period, right? Now comes a second project where we took India's largest airline catering company, took an existing building which was 24/7 operational, right? The facility was about 110,000 square feet of area. Average monthly energy consumption was 42 lakh rupees, right? We got them annual savings of 43.5 lakhs. With a total project cost of 33.5 lakhs, the ROI was less than a year, right? So what did we do for them? We went ahead one more step, right? It's not just sensing. We put in actuators also, in a way what I was talking about, the wireless DDCs, right? And we started controlling their HVAC subsystems, right? Their chillers, their cooling towers, AHUs, CSUs, exhaust, VRVs, other types of air conditioning. All that was, so it's not just in addition to what we were doing in the previous project where the data was feeding into AI/ML algorithms, which were creating an automated ticketing system. This data was now also feeding into AI/ML algorithms, which were deciding when to put in what control actions, which eventually resulted in energy savings for the customer as well, right? So, like I said, you get to view all of those things, but you also get to have now time-based and data-driven controls, which eventually lead to energy savings, right? So, I mean, I'll just conclude now by saying that if you want to engage with Zenatix, this is the right way, right? Unlike a BMS where you have to plan everything upfront, you can take a stage journey with us and with an IoT-based automation solution. In stage one, just simply set up energy and asset management system, right? Get some IoT sensors, could be energy meters, temperature, humidity sensors, UPS battery voltage, earthing voltage. Get these sensors deployed and connected. Our system will look at the huge volume of data, identify anomalies, create tickets on that. Those tickets can either be fed into our ticketing system or could be integrated with customers' ticketing system. The system will pay for itself in 12 to 18 months. Reap all these benefits, take it to the next stage. Now start squeezing out more and more savings by allowing the system to automatically control as well and have another set of ROIs being delivered in the next 12 to 18 months, right? So seeing is believing. All this can be easily done in an existing building, which can be retrofitted wirelessly. You don't need existing wiring. I think the whole space is seeing a whole lot of innovation, and IoT itself will be the future when it comes to innovation in the buildings. And we are the leaders in that innovation. I'll just finish off with that and leave it open for Q&As. Right. So I'll go with some. So, Mr. Prabhat, there's a question around work from home and building energy consumption going to go down. Do you have estimates for how these numbers would change?
So, Amarjeet, I have been sitting and hammering out answers to these questions as you've been doing the product presentation. So some of the answers have already gone in because I have answered done and type answers, but I will read them out also as you ask. So yes, work to home will start and office energy usage will go down. Home energy usage will go up, but people will be very concerned about indoor air quality as some of us are being at the age that we are. Okay, we don't step out very easily to your conference room also unless we know what your indoor air quality is. So there will be energy usage in terms of cleaning the air, which will get added on. HEPA filters at the end or small air cleaners at the end and things like that. During the pandemics, the energy consumption showed about 15 to 20% dip, which came back very, very quickly. And going forward, in India, at least, the market that we know, the office building, what do you call it? Building them at this point of time is not really under pressure. If we see it sustaining for a very long time, then it'll get under pressure. But still, we are building a lot. So we are still buying 3 million air conditioners in a year. So be prepared. We don't want another 3,000 megawatt power plant coal-based to be installed. That's my take on it. So don't presume that energy consumption is on its way down at this point.
Correct. I think, I mean, I'll also just add that our Honorable Prime Minister announced World Startup Day, right? I mean, I think India, if anything, all of us are very, very bullish about India growth story in the coming decades, right? And I mean, that growth will be coming from a whole lot of SMEs, a whole lot of startups, which of course will automatically, I mean, yes, work from home is something that is changing the trend, but it will be a mixed culture, right? I mean, we are social by nature, right? So therefore, it will never be a complete work from home. I'll jump on to other questions. I mean, there are some questions related to technicalities. Within a hospital, yes, we can give kilowatt hours per bed per day consumption. We don't have any hospital in the portfolio. Would love to get one of the hospitals if there are people out there who are interested and happy to talk about it. Does Zenatix focus largely on energy savings or provides complete automation? I mean, unlike a typical BMS, which is focusing only on the automation, we are focusing on both, right? See, automation by itself doesn't deliver the ROI, right? You can also say that, look, I can have a person running around in the building or a team of people running around in the building, taking those actions manually, right? But automation done in the right way at the right time results in savings, right? And all the data being churned out from that automation, if used the right way, can lead to predictive maintenance. So that is what we are focused on. Who owns the data? The data is for the customer. We actually have very, very strict data ownership policies. Every customer has its own instance of the database. No other customer has access to the instance of the database for any other customer. We do use this data for improving our algorithms, but otherwise it's the customer who really owns the data. There are no solutions currently for B2C consumers for room air conditioning products, but when it comes to the similar type of air conditioning, but installed in a retail environment. I mean, think of Domino's, right? Let's say they would have 4 to 5 split ACs installed in every Domino store, and they have 1,100 such stores across the country. So if you have to manage 6,000 air conditioners spread across 300 cities, then yes, we have a platform for that. But if you want to manage 2 or 3 or 5 air conditioners in one home, right? I mean, we don't have the solution for that. Does cloud results in delay of the actions being taken, right? Or what if the connectivity fails? I think that's a very good question. Let me spend maybe a minute on it. Yes, there's a bit of hesitancy that if things are wireless, should I trust them, right? Which is why we have actually built 2 layers of redundancy. So we have a wireless DDC, which is by itself an independent entity. So even if that DDC gets disconnected from the gateway, it will continue to function independently. We even have an app such that a user can go next to the DDC, connect to the DDC over Bluetooth, of course, with security built in, and then can change the set points also, even if that DDC gets disconnected from the gateway. So that DDC together with an app can actually work as an independent unit itself, even when it gets completely disconnected. Now imagine a gateway getting disconnected from the cloud. In that case, that gateway getting connected with the rest of the DDCs can function independently. We have edge computing algorithms, which will make sure that the system functions independently, even if it disconnected from the cloud. And we keep buffering the data also. We can buffer data for weeks and months, right? So that as and when the system comes up, it should flush out all the data. So there is pretty much zero data loss, right? So we have built the whole system keeping in mind this redundancy in place. And therefore, you should not worry about systems getting disconnected. Battery life with 2 simple AAA batteries, a temperature humidity sensor can last for about 2 years with 30-second sampling rate. You change the sampling rate to 5 minutes, it can last for 10 years, right? But we collect data every 30 seconds to 1 minute because we use this data into a lot of smart algorithms that sort of feed into the data. Any work done in the solar power generation, in PV solar panel optimization? Again, solar is not what we have done, but if you have a solar unit, you would want us to connect it, or if you have multiple such units distributed, it makes a perfect business case. Would be happy to get into such thing. What about
I would intervene here. I would
Yeah,
intervene
sure,
here, Amarjeet ji.
sure.
In fact, Mr. Prakash Lohia is an industry stalwart and has done a lot of good work with Reliance and other people, or is still doing that. And in fact, companies like yours should be looking at the opportunity of, interacting with these people so that some work in this field starts coming. My angle to the whole thing is not commercial. It is a little different. I want the youngsters in this country to latch on to this particular technology. At one point in time, uh, thanks to some stalwarts, they got into normal IT business and see where we are today because of the kind of people we have, intelligent people. Similarly, this field of IoT will prosper if people have a little trust, join up with these companies that are fledging on the IoT platform. They are not like the top 4 players in the world or something who are short of time. They are hands-on people and walk them through these particular jobs. I would say there are a lot of intelligent stuff that is coming up at the top end, at the bottom end, at the middle end. Join together and do these things and derive the benefit. So I hope I have not digressed. Back to you, Amarjeet.
Yeah, no, thank you very, very much for that added comment. I think there are again a few more things about integrations with other systems like fresh air or fire panel systems or security systems. Like I said, it's a very, very extendable system. Um, we started with this notion of what can deliver the ROI, right? And of course, if the customer really sees the value in integrating these fire panels and security systems onto a common dashboard, we are happy to do that. But often we don't see that the customer is willing to sort of put in the investment because the ROIs are not very clear. I mean, if to any customer those ROIs are clear, technically it is very, very feasible for us to do. Often we don't take it up in our projects because of largely the ROI issue. Uh, are these devices our own devices or we take off the shelf? So the wireless control device is the industry first, completely designed by us. And like I said, because we wanted to ensure that there is redundancy at multiple levels, so we have put in a lot of intelligence into this device. Some of the sensors are our own sensors. For example, temperature, humidity, luminosity is our own temperature sensors. Some of these sensors, like AQI sensor, we take off the shelf, but then our software runs on those sensors so that it can seamlessly integrate into the plug and play platform, and you can very easily commission them remotely and sort of maintain them remotely as well. There is this question about protocols used in IoT. I mean, I think Mr. Prabhat had answered that it's any traditional system. So largely, we can integrate Modbus, BACnet. We are also now adding MBus to our portfolio. That's the work in progress. And we can also integrate SNMP based UPS system. So largely, if it's a IP based protocol or a Modbus based device, which is traditionally what it is in, let's say, 80% plus of cases, we can easily integrate. What's the smallest standalone installation possible for ROI? A very small 24/7 store or a Domino store, which has, let's say, 50 to 70,000 rupees of energy bill. We can easily give a good ROI on those. What are the AI/ML algorithms? It's getting a bit technical, which it may not be relevant for the broader audience, but you can definitely email me or I'll be happy to, just call the Q&A phone number, and you can take my phone number as well. Happy to connect directly on these one-on-one conversations about what all intelligence we put in on the data, right? Can we connect equipments like VFDs? Yes, some of these VFDs do have Modbus connection, but if the VFDs don't have Modbus connection, they do have controls over IO ports, and that's where our wireless IO card can come in and then can get connected to this VFD and then make it controllable from the system, right? So there are EMS in the market which claim to do AI ML analysis. Yes, there could be a whole bunch of EMS also that are in the similar market. I think where we see real value and differentiation for Zenatix is the integrated ticketing system. We have not seen any other system that says that, okay, I am giving you a ticketing workflow as well. So essentially this analysis translates into a ticket, and that ticket is an actionable ticket, and the customer defines those actionable tickets, and those actions are then taken by people in the team, right? So that whole ticketing workflow we have seen to be of very good utility in terms of delivering the value and not just claiming that, okay, we have AI ML algorithms running. Do we share source codes of algorithms in case clients wants to switch vendors? So the algorithms are currently proprietary, and we don't share the source code. We don't also see the reason for shifting. I mean, as long as we are giving the good quality service, right, and we are giving the insights, there is no reason why the customer should shift, and which is what is seen by 90% stickiness in our customer base as well. I think, I mean, for the remaining 10%, these are stores where perhaps we didn't, I mean, they were not meant to get an ROI. I mean, where the perhaps the whole building was structured in a way that the system was not able to deliver the, I mean, the ROI promise. But I mean, if the ROI is being delivered, I actually don't see a reason why people would shift, right? Do we need UPS supply? No, like I said, I mean, many of these systems are battery powered. Even our gateway has a battery backup. So long as, let's say, your facility already has a DG backup, our systems will continue to function during that transition time from raw to DG. But if you don't have a DG backup and you would, I mean, then in any case, your equipments are down when there is no power. So after 15 minutes, if the whole system also goes down, I mean, it's not of a worry. Configurable notifications, yes, we have. I mean, the whole alerting mechanism is configurable, while we have our own intelligent algorithms deciding on these tickets. But if customer also wants to configure some simple rule-based systems, that can easily be done. We have some queries around product information. We'll deal with it separately. If the equipment, say AHU, does not have the smart controller, how IoT is going to work? I think that's very interesting question, right? So, so let's say the AHU, right? Let's take the specific case of AHU. If the valves are not motorized, I mean, are not digitally controlled valves, right? We can always have an SI first replace those valves with digitally controlled valves, and then our system can come in place to sort of control those over the analog or the digital inputs and outputs, right? So I think there has to be some retrofitting required if the systems are very, very old. But that retrofitting, again, I mean, we have seen in the industry, people can easily do that, and there are experts who can easily do that as well. Data center, again, we don't have any live customer with the data center, but if there are, I mean, data center, we also understand people are very, very finicky in terms of control. And therefore, as a first step, we would rather get into the data center from a very, very detailed monitoring perspective. We actually, I mean, rather than large data centers, we actually have a customer that has hundreds of edge data centers. And that's a new concept that is coming in. And those edge data centers, there we do temperature monitoring, UPS monitoring, temperature of all the racks, energy monitoring, and we are again integrating that with their ticketing workflow, right? So I think data centers is a very, very strong use case. We can do very, very detailed monitoring in an existing deployed data center because everything is battery powered. So I'm happy to discuss these use cases. And my first reaction would be that let's start with monitoring and not controlling in the data center. We do not make existing equipments. I mean, if the equipment already has a communication port, let's say Modbus, we would put in a small device that would talk on Modbus on one side and wireless on the other side, and therefore can sort of make this whole communication wireless with an existing equipment that already has a communication port. Um, People are asking about open thread protocol being better. Again, a little bit technical question. Happy to answer that separately. What coordination do you need with OEMs? I mean, if it's a Modbus based thing, get us the Modbus register mapping, right? If it's a Wi-Fi based device, for example, companies like Armstrong now have Wi-Fi based pumps, right? Get us their RESTful protocol, and REST integrations we will take care of at our end, right? So, and these things are typically made public by OEMs that are selling connected products. So, I mean, you should not have a problem getting all of these, all of this information. Scope of scalability, I think we today collect 200 million data points, right? And in our 8 years of existence, we have not deleted a single data point, right? So highly, highly scalable system. I don't think even a local system can compare with the kind of backups and the scalability that we provide at the cloud level. Right. I think there is this comment on that, right? IoT is supposed to be a long-time relationship between the service provider and end user, right? But the worry is there are many startup companies coming up with such systems. And a matter of fact is that 1% of these companies cross 5 years, right? I mean, like I said, we are into 9th year. We are backed by a large group called Large Group Hero that we all know of. And they believe in the long-term vision of the company, right? I resonate with the sentiment of Mr. Gogulnath, right? And I think that's where we would fill in that gap. We also feel that it's a journey, right? We want people to take journey. There is so much of hidden value in the data or in the control systems, right? I mean, even with all the efficiencies we are talking about in today's seminar, I strongly believe that we are still scratching the tip of an iceberg, right? We would love to take these journeys. And I think for the system integrators out there in this seminar, think of these journeys as a way for you to create alternate revenue streams as well, right? So today, you would go commission a system, there is a very small AMC, but in this case, if energy savings are promised through continuously improved control logics, right? Then you can, I mean, we typically have a 60% fixed price and then a 40% recurring for our customers. And customers are very, very happy to pay that recurring fee because that 40%, I mean, the whole 100% is first of all covered in 12 months and followed by the 40% is just like, I mean, the customers is having 60 to 70% net savings starting from year 2 onwards, right? So customers are very, very happy paying us the recurring fee because the solution is delivering for that. CAPEX versus OPEX models, we do have different models. I mean, just get in touch with the business team. They can explain different models. Do you control the capacity of the compressor of chiller through AI as OEM need to give permission? Yeah, I mean, for chillers today, we typically go via a chiller plant manager, and we would interface with a chiller plant manager to and not direct. I mean, and sort of connect to chillers to an extent whatever OEM provides, like Modbus or backnet based integration. I think, like I said, there is so much more value that can be derived once we go deeper into these systems as well. And we know that for a lot of this journey, we can't do it alone. There are so many experts out there, many of whom are attending today's session as well, right? Who know these systems perhaps much more than us, right? And we would be happy to partner with all of you out there, where your domain expertise and our technical expertise can be combined together to even deliver greater values than what we are promising or what we are able to do today. I think I'll just finish off with, on that note, that yes, we have about 8 years of field experience delivering real value, delivering more than 50 gigawatt hours of energy saving, but we are still scratching the tip of an iceberg. There is the BMS penetration in India is less than 5%, and IoT can really take it up to the levels that are achievable, right? Even in the US, for buildings that are greater than 100,000 square feet, the BMS penetration is 50%, and less than that size of buildings, the BMS penetration is less than 2%, right? So can India leapfrog, right? The way we have leapfrogged in mobile technology, right? Today, the amount of 4G coverage we have in India is sort of, and at the price we have in India is just unimaginable, right? The way India has leapfrogged in the financial sector, the UPI system, is unimaginable in any other context. I think building energy efficiency, especially with wireless control, right? We don't, because the BMS penetration is so low, we don't have a legacy of BMS to sort of play around with, right? Can we take it to our advantage and say that, okay, let's start with wireless first, right? Let's start with IoT-based system. And here is a company built in India that understands the Indian context, that has built the solution for our context, and let's sort of expand their solution and perhaps take it to the global solution. And that's why Hero Group has partnered with us, right? I mean, they want to take this solution to the global levels. A solution that is meant for India, is successful in India, take it to the global levels, right? So I'll just wrap it up on this note. Mr. Prabhat, if you have any
Yeah,
final
I will
comments.
take about, I'm so happy to see that even at after so much time, we have 116 people who are still on the system, and there is a lot of interest in it, including mine. So the most important thing is that the system has to deliver, and we can only check the delivery by participating and interacting with these people who have a problem in hand and things like that. So I will conclude with 3 or 4 major statements as I see it. A, IoT-based systems today, the types that Zenatix is offering and the types that we are talking about today, is not 1:1 replacement of a BMS system. First of all, if you have an airport, can anyone just go and put a full IoT-based system tomorrow? I have my own doubts on it. So that is not the end where I would expect all these attendees and all these intelligent people to start with. But if you have, from the other end, things that are related to chiller plant energy, I saw questions on energy efficiency ratio, EER monitoring, on bits and pieces which become critical. I'm to say, if you called one of the top 4 BMS companies, the interest would be minimal. But this is where IoT companies need to jump in and provide solutions to the service companies and other people, hold hands, try and do things together, because wireless has a huge way to go. I'm to say, if you had 5 chillers on the roof and all you wanted to do is put remote on, off, on, you don't have to lay a wire from the top of the roof to your plant room today. Thanks to all this, the wireless and the things like that, very, very simple systems can do your digital in, they can do your digital out, they can do your analog in. Now, when it comes to the analog out of the BMS systems, those are under PID control.
Sir, I think we lost your voice again.
The 80, the VFDs in this country are lying at, are you getting my voice
Yes,
now?
yes, we can hear.
Are lying at fixed positions. You know, usko 40% पे करके छोड़ दिया है, 60% पे करके छोड़ दिया है. So PID needs a lot of work to be done on both ends, whether it is VMS or it is IoT. And I'm sure we are in a journey and we will reach there. Bottom line is get your energy efficiencies right, monitor your energies, have a year-to-year comparison, make sure we are on the correct path so that we don't have to add so many more coal-based power stations in short time to come. So Amarjeet, I think, there's a lot of interest in it. We should hold some of very open sessions in time to come. Let us see how we can plan it out, where we can have more of a 1:1 interaction on a Google Meet kind of thing, or, everyone allowed to talk kind of thing, and good question answer sessions, and take this session forward. So with this, I would like to sign off.
Yeah, I think we can sort of have a technology oriented things session. We can have practitioner oriented sessions. We do have people's interest from this webinar, so we can reach out to specific people and hold longer detailed sessions later on. I would also like to thank ISHRE for giving us this platform. I think we would not have been able to reach where we are. I mean, we are also an active participant in ISHRE. We have benefited from being there. So we would not have been where we are if ecosystems like ISHRE wouldn't have helped us. So thank you everyone in the ISHRE team.
And particularly Jitendra, who we have been interacting with, and he has done a lot of hard work in getting this particular show on the road. Ravi, who has coordinated this, and I even went across to Ashwini Mehra, would like to thank him, and Vikram for sending it across to many associations, and everyone who has participated in this program. Please retain the list of participants. We would love to get back to them on a one-to-one basis. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jitendra this side. Thank you, sir, for conducting the very informative webinar on ISHRE platform. On behalf of ISHRE Board of Governors, we thanks to you, Prabhas sir and Amarjeet sir, for the interactive session. We had a good 40-minute, almost 40-minute question and answer session. Hope delegates enjoyed it. And once again, thanks to all the delegates for joining this product presentation. Thanks to Zenatix for doing this product presentation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.
Thank you.